So we're in the book of Revelation, the apocalypse. And that comes from the Greek word apocalypsis.
It's time to change your world. It's time to let it go. The things you used to think, the things you used to know, they don't help you anymore. It's time to change your mind if it's peace you want to find.
This is Kurt Kaikkonen, pastor of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, at your neighborhood church. Today on Change Your World, we'll be in the book of Revelation. So grab your Bible. We'll be starting in chapter 20.
It's time to change your world. You need to let it go.
So this first resurrection, it begins with Christ and is followed by all the righteous dead. And this all happens before the millennial kingdom, where the second resurrection will be this one-time event, because that is a one-time, all-included event, and that will follow after the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. And it doesn't say it, but I do think that this does include all those Old Testament saints who were looking forward to the Messiah, who acted in faith through all their sacrifices that represented Christ. And when they did all those sacrifices and they did them in obedience to what they knew of Christ. And so you might be thinking here and say, okay, got all that. Everybody's going to be resurrected. But you might wonder, well, who is left on the earth to enter into this millennial kingdom? Who are these people that Jesus is going to rule and reign over? Didn't everyone follow after the beast? And the answer is no. There will be those who actually survive that 7-year tribulation. And there are some people that say that Scripture supports about 1/10 of the people did not receive that mark of the beast. I don't know where they get these statistics. I'm just telling you what other people say because I don't have anything to tell you about from what I read. But those who are found worthy and the ones who are able to enter into this reign of Christ on earth are those people who had not received the mark of the beast, and they'll also be judged by how they treated the Jews in accordance to what it says in Matthew 25:31. And so these people that are going into the millennium kingdom, they have no mark, and they were kind to the Jews when the Jews were fleeing from the Antichrist. And that passage in Matthew 25 is where Jesus, he separates the sheep from the goats, and where Jesus, he turns to the sheep and says, "Come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." And which is not speaking about their entrance into heaven or into any type of eternal salvation, but it's to enter into this kingdom of peace, to this peace that will be on the earth. And so these survivors of the Great Tribulation, once it's established, they will have children and they will fill the earth again. And Israel here will be the leading nation on the earth. Some call them the superpower. And that temple in Jerusalem will become the governing capital where Jesus is, where he will actually rule. And this is where all the promises to Abraham and to Israel will be fulfilled. And they will be that special people that they were to be to all the nations of the earth. And so all the nations now will come to Jerusalem once a year to worship in this kingdom. And in this kingdom, there will be no more wars in the world. And there'll be the peace among the animal kingdom, where all these animals are going to be relating to each other differently, that they're going to actually stop eating each other, and everybody will become a vegan, where it sounds like the world will return again to the way that things were before the flood at Noah's time, where people will be vegetarians, and all those waters that had become bloody during the tribulation, where they're all going to be healed, and the fish are going to be restored and returned, because we'll see that there's this river that flows from the temple, and there won't be any more diseases, because later it talks about all these plants that are going to be for the healing of the nations. So it's not going to need any hospitals or any prisons. This world will need no police, not at all in this kingdom age. And so longevity, it's given back to mankind like it was before the flood. And you can read testament to this in Isaiah 65:20, where it says, "No longer will there be an infant who lives only a few days, or an old person who does not live out his days. For the youth will die at the age of 100, and the one who does not reach the age of 100 will be thought accursed." And so to me, this sounds like people will again be living close to 1,000 years of age, just like before the flood. And some people speculate that the earth will be returned to its original axis. So instead of having this 23 1/3 degree axis that it's now presently set at, that it'll be straight up and down again. And that when this happens, the polar ice caps will melt, and that original water barrier that supposedly covered the earth will return. And now the whole earth will be again like the Garden of Eden, and the whole world will blossom like a rose. And all of this is just speculation, but there is scriptures that support that this is all possible. So all these people living under the perfect rule of God, and everyone here will have so much. They'll all have their own homes, and they'll have plenty of food, and they'll live in peace and security. All those things that people strive for now, and all the things that people have been trying to get under control since the fall of man. So here, everything and everyone will prosper. Children won't be trouble or be in trouble. And they can just go out and they can just go outside and play with all the snakes until the streetlights come on. And there's a couple things about this time that crossed my mind, and I'm not sure of. These are just my crazy thoughts, because I know that Jesus does physically rule and reign in Jerusalem physically. And I know that we will also physically rule and reign with him in these new bodies of ours. But this is what I wonder. I wonder if the regular people on the earth that are in regular bodies, if they're going to be able to see us or be able to physically see Jesus. Because our bodies will be these glorified bodies, and they'll be like the angels. And we see that the angels, they can be seen or unseen. So that's something that I wonder about. I don't know. It's just the way I think when I have nothing else to think about, which is not often. Okay, now there's this other thought that keeps running through my head. And I think that some of us, we might even have some descendants still around the planet. I don't know. I mean, I don't think we'll love them any more than anybody else. But I know that I have some family that I don't think is going to make the rapture, or at least not yet. So I'm thinking, well, you know what? I may end up having some descendants around the planet and be there in my glorified body. But I don't think I'll treat them any different. I'll try not to be prejudiced there. So your kids, if your kids are there, I'll try to treat them just the same. So all these people in this kingdom, they have lived this wonderful life. They have only known perpetual peace in the perfect reign of Christ. They know very, very little about pain and sorrow. And these people, they do not even have to make a choice of who they will follow until the end of this 1,000 reign, when Satan is released from the bottomless pit. And you would think, well, with everything going so fine, why would God even want to disturb this? Why release Satan back into the world? Isn't this perfect world something that God wants? But even though this is a perfect world, man's heart is still fallen. And it's this millennial reign of Christ that exposes man, and it exposes that man is not basically good. And this will actually take away all people's excuses that the reason that people have bad behavior is because of their circumstances. That if you went through what I went through, you would be bad too. So you can't judge me, which is the philosophy that our society is trying to convince us of. But the truth is, it isn't our sin that makes us sinners, but that's because we're sinners is why we commit sin, because that's who we are. We are sinners. And this is what we inherited from our father Adam. This is our fallen nature, in which this proves that none of this has been God's fault. And it's not God's world that he created that caused all of man's problems. Because no one here in this kingdom, they ever had it bad. All these people, all they ever knew was good. All they've known is peace and provision. And when you see here that they immediately turn their back on God as soon as Satan is released. So although Jesus, he ruled the land, he never ruled their hearts. They had never committed their lives to him. So these people, they did not become born again, or at least not all of them. And so here in verse 8, after Satan's time in his prison has expired, he was released back into the earth, and he acts very quickly. And immediately he goes throughout the whole world to deceive everyone again. And here John uses those names Gog and Magog, which are these two prophesized enemies of Israel, where these two entities are going to be used to focus their influence to lead in this rebellion and to gather the whole world to battle against Israel. And because of these names being used, Gog and Magog, some believe that this battle is the battle that's described in Ezekiel 38. But this is not that battle. That battle that's described in Ezekiel 38, that occurs before the return of Christ. And it's probably right before the rapture and before the tribulation, but if not, it's during the 7-year tribulation period. Because this battle in Ezekiel against Israel, it comes from the north, where this battle, it comes from the four corners of the earth. And that battle in Ezekiel, what happens after that battle, we're told, where Israel, they're going to collect all the spoils of war, they're going to burn all their weapons as fuel, and they're going to cleanse their lands from all the dead bodies and picking up the bones and burying them. But what is similar between these two battles is that Israel is the target, and here specifically Jerusalem. So now here we are again, and it's 1,000 years later, after that battle of Armageddon, and now the whole world is standing alongside with the devil, once again, trying to destroy Jesus Christ and his people. But this time, God is not going to reform the world. He's not going to try to restore it or redeem it. This time, fire comes down from God and consumes them all. And it's all wrapped up in a moment, and all human history is ended. And so this battle ends before it ever begins. And then the first thing that God does after this battle is he deals with the devil. And now the devil is judged and sentenced, and he's cast into the lake of fire. And we're told that his old comrades, the beast and the false prophet, that they're still there. Even after this 1,000 years, they're still there and they're still being tormented. And it's saying forever and ever, which means forever and ever. And in the Greek, it actually means from ages of ages. So the Bible, it never teaches any type of annihilationism. But there's many cults that actually teach this view. But the Bible, it knows none of this. And a lot of people, they have a problem with this, because they think it shows God to be cruel or unmerciful, which is so far from the truth. Because if you look at this, God, he could have hid all this from us. He didn't have to reveal what's going to happen to those who hate him. And I've heard people say to me that they say, I'd rather see God call us by his love and not by fear, not by scaring us into this salvation. But love is how God calls us. And he has been revealing his love of what he's willing to go through personally because of his love to save us. And I believe, but you don't have to agree with me, but by showing us what happens to those who have rejected his salvation and who have rejected his love toward them, about all these people who hate him, God here again is showing his love. Because God, he doesn't want anyone to go through this. And so he doesn't hide it. And he doesn't surprise anyone. And he's gone to great lengths so that nobody would ever have to go here. And so to me, this is just another attempt on God's part of saying, when you see this judgment to those who don't respond to his love, as if God is saying to them, please, please, don't do this to yourself. Because you don't have to. Because the truth is that God will save anyone. God refuses no one who comes to him. So he's never going to say to anyone, no. He's never going to say, no, you can't be forgiven. Or, I don't love you. You're too bad. You've done too much to be forgiven. Because salvation is not graded on a curve. The standard for heaven is perfection. And so you can't have any sin and still go to heaven. You have to have an A. And the only one who has an A is Jesus. And if I was going to be honest with you, I don't even think I have a D. But Jesus, he freely gives us his perfection, and he exchanges it for our sin, where he becomes sin for us, and we receive his perfection to our account. So basically, we get his report card and he gets ours. So the question is never, how much sin is God willing to forgive? And that's because Jesus paid for all sin, everyone's, all the sins of the world. And all you have to do is come to him to receive it. And so after this 1,000 years, there's a second resurrection, and John says he saw a great white throne and him who sat on it. And so the white here, it speaks of purity and holiness, and being a single throne, it speaks of his kingly sovereignty. And according to John's gospel in chapter 5, verse 22, this is Jesus who's sitting on this throne. And in that verse it says, where the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son, that all should honor the Son, just as they honor the Father. And no one here can hide from this throne, and no one here can escape from its judgment, because there is nowhere left to hide. Because we're told here that the earth and heaven fled away from the face of Jesus. And so there's now no place for the old earth or the old heaven. And so I have absolutely no idea what these people are standing on, but they're standing there on something. And all of these people, they came from every walk of life. And it didn't matter what they did for a living, if they were a king or a janitor or a babysitter or a mom. It didn't matter where you're from. It's all great people and all small people from all the ages of history. Everyone is here. And this is a one-time event. And it doesn't matter how you died, because it says here that the grave and death gave up the people it was holding. And then it says that even the sea gave up those who died there. And I don't know for sure, but this sounds like this could actually be a physical resurrection, not just the souls of people. And what makes me think that way is by it saying that the sea gives up its dead. Why would it have to give up its dead if it's just a soul? But the people who aren't here are us, those who are in the first resurrection, those whose names are written in the book of life. And I don't know about you, but I know my name is there, because all of those whose names who were written in the Lamb's book of life, they've already been judged. And they've been judged at what is called the judgment seat of Christ, or is also known as the Bema Seat judgment. So everyone who has ever lived will stand before one of these judgments, and they're going to receive what they've done in their lives, either good or bad. But at our judgment, at the judgment seat of Christ, the things wrong that we have done will be burnt up, and we're not going to be punished for them. Our slate will be clean, as if we never did those things. And all that's going to happen there is that we're going to be rewarded for all the things that remain, for all the things that we did right. But these standing here before God at the white throne judgment, it doesn't turn out the same way. And this will not be anything like a trial. So it's not like going to court, and no one's going to be able to go there and defend themselves or have something to say to establish any kind of fact like a courtroom, because everyone who's standing here has already been condemned. Now it's just to determine what their sentence will be. And what it seems like, and I kind of make this stuff up, but what it seems like and it looks like to me is it looks like there's these two tables there. It doesn't say anything about tables. That's just how I picture it in my mind. But there are these two tables there, and on one table there's this pile of books, because it says books, and it says it in the plural form. So there's a lot of books. And on the other table, there's just one book, and it's singular because it says book, and it says it in the singular, and it says that book is called the Book of Life, and it's open. And so all these people standing there, none of their names are written in that one book. And so they're judged by the books on the other table. That's recorded everything in their life. And they're opened, and it shows all their works, and they'll be judged by what they've done, good or bad. Because there will be different degrees of punishment for these people, just like there will be different degrees of rewards for believers at the judgment seat of Christ. But there will be no believer standing at this judgment. And no believer will ever be judged by any of these books, because in these books, there's nothing written about them. Everything about them has been erased. The only thing that's written about them is in the other book, and all that's written there is their name, in the book of life. But in those books that all the non-believers are judged by, there will not be one good work that will ever give them entrance into heaven, because heaven isn't earned by works. It's given, and it's freely given by Jesus. And it's all because of the work he performed in our behalf on the cross, dying in our place. And so it's just like how Jesus had explained it when he was asked, well, what shall we do that we may do the works of God? And Jesus, his answer was, this is the work of God, that you believe in him who he sent, because that's the only work you can do to get into heaven, by believing in Jesus. And that means that you're believing that he is the Christ and believing on him, that he will save you. And that's it. And none of these people standing here before the white throne, and none of these people did that. So everybody here will be accountable to all the truths that they've heard about God and about Jesus their whole life. And then all of these standing here will also be thrown into the lake of fire. They're going to be assigned to the degree of punishment that they deserve. And it's all because of a lifelong rejection of Jesus. And there are many who don't hold a biblical view of Christianity, who try to convince people that a loving God would never send anyone to hell or to the lake of fire. And they think that the view of God that I'm describing is very unchristian-like, but they're wrong. It is very Christian, and God is a very loving God. He did everything possible at the cost of himself to keep this from happening to anyone. And Jesus himself, he taught this view as truth. And he taught it in Matthew 18, in Matthew 23, in Matthew 25, and again he taught it in Mark chapter 9. But what God will not do, God would never overstep anyone's free will or force anyone to love him, because there would be no value in that, in a forced love. And God made us in his image, so he made us free. He made us like himself, and he gave us a choice. So God, he doesn't really send people to the lake of fire. People, they actually send themselves, and it's by the rejecting of his son. And then the very last thing that's thrown into the lake of fire is death and Hades. And so death and Hades will be eternally burned up, because these are the last remnants of sin. There will be no possibility of sin or to be able to sin going into this new heaven and new earth. Death and Hades will be removed forever with no possibility of ever returning. So if you're worried that you might not be in this first resurrection, here is a scripture that you find in John 5:24, and it says, "He that hears my word and believes on him that sent me has everlasting life, and shall not come into condemnation, but has passed from death into life."
You need to change your world. You need to let it go. Oh, oh, oh.
Thanks for listening to Change Your World. Change Your World is an outreach of Calvary Chapel, Waterford, and your neighborhood church. If you're listening to Change Your World in the Detroit metro area, you can still make it to church today and join us at 10 a.m. at Calvary Chapel, Waterford, 183 South Winding Drive, Waterford, Michigan. We're competing with the Catholics. It's only an hour. All the donuts you can eat, and you don't have to believe a thing we say, but it could change your world.
You need to change your world.
The rest of today's message can be heard at yourneighborhoodchurch.org. So check us out and download the app. And until next week, remember,